Welcome, grade 12s. Yes, DBE TV. We're doing accounting. You are with Ashraf Patel. And we're looking at financial statements with the emphasis on cash flow statements. Right, now, the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, what is the purpose? Why do you draw up a cash flow statement? So clearly you can see that when you are dealing with the cash flow statement, remember, you are looking at the movement of cash. You got that? The movement of cash within an enterprise during a specific period. Now, yes, you've drawn up a statement of comprehensive income. Yes, you've drawn up the statement of financial position. But those two statements would not give you what you're looking for in terms of the cash flow statement, because of that, the Companies Act stipulates the cash flow statement as one of the statements that need to be presented to your shareholders. Now, let's go directly into the cash flow statement. And if you look at the broad categories within a cash flow statement, you would say that the three categories that we're going to be dealing with would be: 1, operating activities; 2, investing activities; and 3, your financing activities. Now I'm going to give you just a minute to try and draw notes for yourself and ask yourself this question: what categories, within these categories, what activities, what concepts would go within, for example, my operating activities? What does it deal with? When I'm dealing with investing activities, what does that concept of investing activities deal with? And if I'm looking at my financing activities, what does financing has to do with in relation to my cash flow statement? So I'm going to give you a minute to look at those three activities and just draw some kind of parallels to see what would I find under these categories. What aspects would affect these categories? All righto, you got a minute to do that. Okay, now I'm sure you've discussed this with your friends, and the list that you have drawn up should include the following items. Let's look at them. Obviously, the most common source of cash in any company would be the buying and selling of inventory, receipts from debtors, payments to creditors, and the payment of expenses. So when you're dealing with operating activities, you are basically dealing with the buying and selling, that operating activity, the most important source of cash within a company. When it comes to investing activities, what are we referring to here? We are talking about fixed assets in terms of any changes that you may have within your fixed assets. Obviously, that deals with the buying and selling of your fixed assets, as well as as well as the fixed deposit that you may place within a financial house or a fixed deposit that is maturing very shortly, right? So those are aspects that would fall within the category of my investing activities. When I deal with my financing activities, what do I deal with? I'm talking about the cash changes as a result of what? The paying of loans, paying off of loans, receiving loans, definitely, the issuing of shares, right? And one more. What do you think that is? Of course, it would be the buyback of shares. Okay, we're going to discuss these concepts in greater detail, but those are the broad categories within your operating activities, investing activities, and your financing activities. Let's take it one step further. Now, when I'm looking at my inflows of cash, remember, the category is my operating activities. Obviously, money received from sales, money received from other incomes, all of that would be within the ambit of your operating activities. Outflows, in which case we can say that the money is leaving our bank account. Remember, grade 12s, that when you are dealing with the cash flow statement, your answer is always relevant to the impact on the bank account. In other words, is there an inflow of funds? Is my bank account increasing? Or is there an outflow of funds? Is my bank account decreasing? Got that? Okay. Now with regards to operating activities, as it deals with outflows, money paid for stock, right? You're paying for your expenses, you paid for taxation, and you paid for dividends. So all of those categories of payments in terms of the outflows would fall within the broader category of my operating activities. Right. With regards to my investing activities, what am I looking at? What are my sources of cash? Where's the money coming from as a result of sale of your assets and a fixed deposit that is maturing? Right. So, with regards to my outflows now, ask yourself the question, what affects my outflows? It would be money paid for replacing your tangible assets, money paid for buying new assets, and obviously, if you are investing money in a fixed deposit, that too would fall within the ambit of your investing activities. Right. Finally, when it comes to the financing activities, what are we looking at? We're looking at monies received for the issuing of shares, right? Money is received from obtaining loans. That means if we received a further loan, or the outflows would be money used for repaying loans. And yes, the other one that we added on to the previous slide, remember what that was? The buyback of shares, where we are buying back shares from a disgruntled shareholder, and that would also fall within the ambit of your outflows. Now, I want you for a minute just to think of your changes in your working capital. What affects changes in working capital? So one, discuss with your friends around you as to what are the items that I'm looking at when I'm talking about working capital, and how does that impact on a very important note, note number 1, to your cash flow statement. Right? You got a minute to discuss that. Welcome back, grade 12s. Yes, let's look at this very important slide. When you are working with your changes in your working capital, I'm going to give you a language lesson. Language in accounting. Well, guys, listen up. I'm going to teach you what I refer to as the German acronym. It almost sounds German. IULIR. What does it mean? For you as an accounting student doing grade 12 cash flow statements, it has specific reference to when an asset increases in value. What's your acronym? A, I, U, which says when an asset increases in value, we are utilizing cash. This means, therefore, that cash is leaving our bank account. And when a liability increases in value, we are generating cash. In other words, when a liability increases, cash is coming into our business. The bank account is increasing. Another important feature, and something that you must always remember, is whenever the U is involved, that answer will always be in a bracket. Can you see the U formation? I'm going to complete the U formation for you there, just to show you that that answer needs to appear in a bracket. Pertinent to the cash flow statement, grade 12s, no bracket, no mark. I hope you understand that. No bracket, no mark. So whenever there's an outflow of funds, you have to indicate your answer within a bracket, showing it as an outflow of funds. Now that we're done with the German, let's deal with the French acronym. French in accounting? Yes, definitely. It's not a French word, but it sounds French. And what's the acronym? Gr12. And what does it mean? It means the following, grade 12s. When an asset decreases in value, we are generating cash. That means there's an inflow of cash. By the same token, when a liability decreases in value, we are utilizing cash, which is indicated with a bracket once again. So every time, watch this here, Gr12 tells us that when a liability decreases in value, we are utilizing cash. Let us look at that in terms of an example. If you are told that your trade and other payables, remember, a cash flow is about comparisons. So you're comparing 2014 to 2015, right? Most important, make sure that you draw your arrow. And yes, I refer to this as the love arrow. You know that if a love arrow is misdirected in the wrong direction, it definitely causes havoc in your lives. I'm sure you've experienced that at some time in your life. By the same token, in accounting, if your comparison is done in the wrong direction, it's going to create a havoc in your answers, and you don't want that to happen, do you? So therefore, make sure you know which is the beginning of the year, which is the end of the year. The arrow will tell you that that's the beginning of the year and that's the end of your financial year. So simple. This was 50,000 is now 20,000. What happened to your trade and other payables? Clearly you can see that your trade and other payables decreased from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And it decreased by an amount of 30,000 rand. Okay, let's go to our acronym. Liabilities decrease, utilized. Can you see? There has been an outflow of funds. So therefore, my appeal to you, grade 12s, is whenever you are working with a cash flow statement, make sure that you keep these two acronyms in front of you all the time. Recap, ayulig, assets increase, utilize, liabilities increased, generated. French, assets decrease, generated, liabilities decrease, utilized. If you know these two acronyms, you A for away. We're going to take a break now, but we'll be back in a jiffy. Welcome back, grade 12s. Yes, we're busy with the cash flow statement. Now remember, for examination purposes, this section is very, very important. The reason why you will never find an examination paper that does not have but something on the cash flow statement. So keep your eyes and ears open, have your wits about you, pay attention, and I'm sure by the time we're done with this section, you will have a good idea of the types of questions that could feature in an examination paper. Right, we are provided with information relating to Meteor supermarkets, and you are expected, what do you want? What is expected of you? You are expected to complete the cash flow statement, right? And also, in your answer book, some of the figures are given to you already. So therefore, and there is a theory question as well, but the emphasis is on the cash flow statement. So what we'll do is, we'll go directly into the question and see that in terms of my cash flow statement, you will notice that what is it that I need to answer? Number one, I need to work out here in my cash flow statement. I need, now, with regards to the format of the cash flow statement, you will notice under your operating activities, you have three items: interest paid, taxation, right? And obviously, it's taxation paid, and it's your dividends that you have to work out. Now, with regards to taxation, let us start with taxation first. And when you're calculating your taxation paid, there are different methods that you can use, right? You can use the vertical method, or you can use the T account method. The choice is entirely yours. I'm going to show you the method that I find the easiest and the best for you as a learner, because this, you are working on prior knowledge. It's something that you've done already. So look at your SARS income tax account. Step number one, the first thing that I want is my balance in my SARS income tax account when at the beginning of the year. So now, if I look at my information, the question that I need to ask is, what type of an account is SARS income tax? And the answer, grade 12s, is it depends. It depends on what? It depends on the balance in that account at the beginning of the year. Right, once we've ascertained the beginning of the year, clearly you can see that's the direction of my arrow. Now I go to my SARS income tax, and I see that at the beginning of the year, my SARS income tax has a credit balance of 122,000 Rand. Immediately, I go to my SARS income tax account, and I indicate the 122,000 Rand as a credit balance. Can you see that? So, procedure. The procedure is, find the balance in your SARS income tax account at the beginning of the year. Right. Number two, go back now and find your SARS income tax at the end of the year, right? So we've dealt with the beginning of the year. Let's go to the end of the year. Notice that my SARS income tax at the end of the year amounts to 128,000 Rand. Clearly, where is it featuring? It is now featuring under my trade debtors, indicating that it is an asset account. Got it? So therefore, if that is an asset of 128,000 Rand, then what do? It's a debit balance at the end of the year. So watch this carefully. 128,000 Rand, because it's a debit balance, and therefore, at the end of the year, if it is a debit balance, it has to be brought down from the credit side. So I'm using prior knowledge. I've started with my opening balance, I've brought in my closing balance, and now what do I have to do? There's the third component that I have to include in the SARS income tax account. Go for it. Discuss it amongst your friends and tell me what's the third component that needs to be brought in order to determine the amount of taxation that has been paid to SARS. Your minute starts now. Welcome back, grade 12s. Yes, what's that component that I'm looking for? I'm looking for my taxation as it appears in my income statement. Let's see if I have that information here. I should have that information somewhere. There goes. Income tax, 441,000 Rand. In this particular activity, the income tax is given to you. You may be faced with a situation where you have to calculate the income tax as a percentage, or you may have to redraft maybe the appropriation account to find out the missing figure. So keep that in mind. So we've got our income tax as 441,000. Let's go and put it in. What's my contra entry? Debit income tax, credit SARS income tax, 441,000 Rand. And therefore, you can now see that you can work out 122,000 plus 441,000 plus 128,000 to give you 691,000, and that, grade 12s, voila, is my missing figure. What is that figure? That's the amount of taxation that has been paid. Now, obviously, let's look at this one more time. When you are doing your taxation here in your answer book, you have to show your calculation of your taxation. And what was the calculation of your taxation? Here it is. It is 122,000. So 122,000 plus the next figure was 441,000, 441,000 plus the last component there was we got that one, we need that one there. It was 128,000 plus 128,000 to give you the 691,000 as your answer. So notice that the ledger account was a calculation that you had done, but this is what you want to see on your exam script, because this here would then be where you would be allocated your marks to show your calculations. And therefore, grade 12s, you can clearly see that based on your calculations here, that is how you would then calculate your bank figure in respect of the taxation that has been paid. Okay, the next thing that we have to do is to calculate our dividends paid. I'm going to give you a minute to tell me exactly what would you look for when you want to work out your dividends that need to be paid. Well, grade 12s, as far as your dividends are concerned, there are 3 ways of calculating the dividends that have been paid. But don't fear when Ashraf is near. Why? I'm going to teach you a shortcut to this particular one. As far as your dividends are paid, the first thing that you look for is last year's final okay? And number 2, you want this year's interim. Okay, now let's look at our given information and let us see, can we find these 2 figures? Right, immediately we go to our information, and in my information I see that I'm told that, look at your shareholders for dividends. Now, if the question is asked to you, what type of an account is shareholders for dividends? Immediately, without thinking, you should know that it should appear under my trade and other payables. That's correct. Unlike your SARS income tax, where your response was, it depends. This one you know for sure that it can only feature under my liabilities. And there you can see it. There's my shareholders for dividends. There's last year's figure. How much? 480,000. So immediately, I've got my one figure, 480,000. So, what are you looking for? You're looking for last year's final, because, let me give you the reason behind it, because last year's final will definitely be paid this year. So there's your one bank figure already. Okay? Secondly, you're looking for this year's interim. Let's see what information we have regarding the interim dividend. dividends for the financial year ending the 28th of February 2014, which is this year, and interim dividends paid. There's your operative word. Interim dividends paid on the 31st of August 2013 amounts to 750,000. So immediately you can see that you've got an interim dividend of 750,000. Now, do you see the shortcut that I've shown you? When you want to calculate your dividends paid, what do you look for? You look for last year's final plus this year's interim, and what do we do with it? We add the two components together. It's 480,000, which was last year's final, plus this year's interim of 750, 1, 2, 3, to give you a total of 1,230,000. Immediately you tell yourself, fine, 1,230,000 and 1,230,000. Obviously, you would show the calculation like we had it in our previous slide. You would include the two components to give you your final figure of 1,230,000. Okay, we finished those two calculations, important calculations, but I'm sure you want to know more. So the place to be is DBE TV, because when we come back, we're going to do more on the cash flow statement. Welcome back, grade 12s. I'm sure you had a quick breather and back to the accounting. Okay, now we're going to calculate our financing activities. And the reason why we're doing the financing activities now is I want you to see what components would go into my financing activities. Right, the first thing that I'm going to look for when I'm doing my financing activities is, just get to that slide. Okay, we're doing financing, so we're going there. Right. Within the financing activities, I want to look at the proceeds of the shares that I have sold. In other words, did I sell shares and how much money did I get from the proceeds of my shares? So immediately I go to my information and I see, right, in terms of my shares, what do I know? There goes. 300,000 shares were issued during the year at 8 Rand per share. So immediately I say, fine, go there, and 300,000 times the 8 Rand per share will give me a value of 2,400,000. Okay? And this then tells me that the amount of money that I generated from the selling of shares amounted to 2,400,000. Therefore, in my answer book, I've got, under my financing activities, I've got my proceeds of shares that were issued, 2,400,000. Remember where it came from? Your calculation was 300,000 shares, and you sold those shares at 8 Rand per share. The next component that you look for under your financing activities is, was there a buyback of shares? Let's see. On the 31st of December 2013, the company bought back 50,000 shares from a dissatisfied shareholder at 9 Rand 50 each. The average price of all the shares issued to date was 6 Rand per share. Now, what price do you use in the cash flow statement? With regards to your buyback of shares, there are 3 prices that you have to look at. I want you to discuss with your friends now. I'll give you a minute to do this. What are the 3 different prices, or what are the components that make up, when you're dealing with the buyback of a share? Just discuss the buyback of the share with regards to the 3 different components. When you come back, we'll see whether you understand it or not. All right, grade 12s, what did you discuss on the buyback of shares? Number 1, when you're buying back a share, your contra entry or your accounts involved are ordinary share capital, right? Retained income and bank. Okay, so now what's the breakup? The average price is what will go to your ordinary share capital. In this case, I'm taking the 1 share, 6 Rand. Okay? We have bought back the share at 9 Rand 50. So the 3 Rand 50 will go to your retained income, right? So if the ordinary share capital was the 6 Rand, which is the average price per share, remember, 6 Rand, average price goes to ordinary share capital. The price above the average price, goes to retained income. Why? Because you've sold above the average price, and the price above the average price must come out of your retained earnings or your retained income. But the entry that goes to bank is the 9 Rand and 50 cents. Okay, now, how does this impact on the cash flow statement? Very simple. The question that you need to answer is, what has happened to bank? Bank will be decreased by the total amount, and therefore, what we do is the following. We say, fine, the entire amount of the buyback, which will be your 50,000 shares, times your 9 Rand and 50 cents will give you 475,000 Rand. And yes, this 475,000 Rand is the total amount by which your bank will decrease. Therefore, when you are working in your cash flow statement, you will therefore include in your cash flow statement, the amount was 475,000, therefore here 475,000. And what was this? A buyback, an outflow of your shares, and that will be the buyback figure. Okay, so I've clearly illustrated to you now where the buyback comes from. And then the third component under your financing activities would be your loan. And let's look at the information on my loan. What information do we have with regards to the loan? Let's see the information that we have with regards to our loan. There's my balance sheet. There's my mortgage loan. There's the information that I require from my loan. Remembering at all times that this is the direction of my comparison, because that was the beginning of the year and that's the end of the year. So therefore, with regards to my loan was 508,000 Rand at the beginning of the year. My loan is now 908,000 Rand. Clearly you can see that there has been an increase in your loan, right? When a liability increases, we have generated funds. Therefore, when you're doing that component, watch here, the loan amount, we received a loan, a further loan, or there was an increase in my loan. Therefore, it could be loan received or the proceeds of your loan, and the amount is 400,000 Rand. So in this way, we have completed our financing activities. I want you now to look at investing activities, this component here, and I want you to tell me exactly what are you going to find in this category of investing activities. We've discussed it earlier in our lesson. Let's see if you remember. We'll give you a minute to discuss it. Well, grade 12s, certainly you should be telling, or the answer that you should be giving me is, under my investing activities, I need to look at tangible assets that were purchased and tangible assets that have been sold, and I also need to look at any fixed deposits that have either been placed into a fixed deposit or a fixed deposit that has matured. Let's look at our information. With regards to my info that I have here, okay, here goes. This is the one I'm looking for. Watch this here. Look at my land and buildings. Obviously, you know that there has been an addition because it's one of the components that you have to calculate. And how do we calculate that? With regards to land and buildings, you look at your balance at the end of the year, which is, let's get it clear for you there, 6,740,000. Therefore, take your 6,740,123 minus your balance at the beginning of the year, which was 2,689,000, 2,689,123, and that will give you the value of the tangible assets that you have purchased in terms of land and buildings. Watch that. There's your land and buildings. You can clearly see you have purchased land and buildings to the value of 4,051,000. So that's the one figure that you're going to use under your investing activities. Right. With regards to the asset that you disposed of, you are told that the cost price of the asset was 140,000 Rand, and the accumulated depreciation until the date of sale was 33,600. Therefore, take your cost price, 140,000, minus your accumulated depreciation of 33,600, and this will give you a value of 106,400. Now, 106,400. What is the 106,400? What did I take? I took my cost price minus my accumulated depreciation, which is equal to my carrying value, right? A vehicle was sold for cash at its carrying value on the 31st of May 2013. Therefore, the carrying value, the 106,400, is the figure that you're going to use under your investing activities as your proceeds from your disposal. Now, this guarantee I give you as a grade 12 learner, only in the section on cash flow will we dispose of a vehicle or any asset at its carrying value. And therefore, you will notice there are no profits or losses in sale of assets when we're dealing with cash flow statements. However, anywhere else in the curriculum, you will still deal with your profit or loss in sale of asset. But when it comes to the cash flow component, it's restricted to disposing of the asset at its carrying value. So, the price or the proceed that you need to remember is that your selling price will always be equal to your carrying value. And there, we've determined our carrying value as 106,400, and that will then be the component of my proceeds from my disposal. Well, grade 12s, we've worked with quite a few concepts within the cash flow statement. Make sure that you practice, because if you do that, guaranteed, you're going to be a shining star, an accounting shining star. Until our next lesson, from me and the crew, be good, keep your feet in the ground, and everything of the best. Bye-bye.